Hi, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to my weekly podcast about spirituality, love, death, devotion, and waking up while living in a messy world. The Satsang with Shambhavi podcast is recorded live each week with students of our nonprofit community, Jayakula. For more information and to find out about attending a satsang, visit jayakula.org. Thanks for listening. Much love to you, wherever and however you are. I think for our time, our culture, the greatest source of lack of humility is our attachment to measuring ourselves by external accomplishments. When we feel that our self-worth is attached to what we accomplish in a career sense or in a relationship sense, or with our education or with our money or with our kids, whatever it is, our spiritual life can also be reframed as a series of accomplishments. As long as we feel a sense of inner disconnect from our real value, and as long as we're trying to recreate a sense of value from our external accomplishments, we really cannot experience humility. Because the root or the basis for humility is understanding, having a real sense of the thisness of our lives, that our lives are just this very small thing, and however they are is how they are, and it's fine. So humility comes from having a sense of this is what it is. This is what a human is. This is what humans do. This is me, without any embellishment, without any need to embellish. And that's where humility comes from. On the one hand, you could say humility comes from more of a sense of scale. When we're thinking that we have to be important or we have to be achieving something, we have lost our sense of scale. And one of the ways to antidote that is to really think about yourself on the planet, in the galaxy, in the universe, or think about yourself in the context of all beings that have ever lived on Earth through all times. And think about your life. It is really just a flash, like the flash of a match burning out very, very quickly. And so the idea that you would do anything important, or that it would really matter that you achieved anything, that it would give significance to your life, is antidoted a bit when you move your awareness out and realize how short and small your life is. So then further humility comes from recognizing that that's not disappointing. It's not disappointing to just be a human coming and going very quickly. It's just the thisness of things. It's how things are. So again, the root of humility is seeing how things actually are, rather than holding on to these narratives that you could make your life significant, or you could do something important, or you could be of any importance. So that's ordinary. But then there's humility that results, or humbleness, from having a much deeper, thoroughgoing experience of your real nature. When you really start to feel that you're not actually a separate being. Who is this self that you are trying to find the value of? It's actually not a separate self. It's simply an upsurge of this much larger self. So we can have more of a sense of scale, that we actually aren't these separate beings running around trying to achieve measurable things that will then make us feel better about ourselves. This is specifically for our time and our culture, because not every time and not every culture has had this issue. But most of the people I encounter are constantly measuring themselves. They want to know, am I smarter than this person or that person? Do I make more money? Have I achieved more? Am I important? Am I making my mark? We've even turned the concept of dharma into something about accomplishment. We've turned dharma into my true calling. Dharma just means duty. That's where you put your head down and you just do whatever it is that's appropriate for wherever you happen to be placed in life. It's not finding your one special thing to do that's going to make you stand out above and beyond the rest. That's not Dharma. It's just kind of funny that in our culture, some people have turned Dharma into this very individualistic, egoic pursuit. You don't have to be beautiful. You don't have to have money. You don't have to have special talents. And even if you have them, they're not anything that you created. They're just how you showed up. Again, it has to do with the distance of things. You showed up with talents? Great. You showed up just like a schlub who does their thing and then dies? That's great too. So first there's scale, like recognizing on an ordinary way that what's going on in your life, in your family, in your nation, in your planet is just a speck in a billion, skrillion, unimaginable numbers of specks. And then there's recognizing that you aren't really an individual. You're part of this cosmic organism. And what you do is an expression of that larger self, not your little self. So even if you become someone important in your town or your city or your country, who is that that's becoming important? It's just a play of importance. It's not actual importance. Everything has total equality. It's only an experience of relative importance, and it's not important. So basically, we can't take credit for anything, which is good news because that means we can't take discredit either. Reality simply doesn't work on that scale of merit and demerits. It simply doesn't work that way. That's just one of the games that God is playing and happens to be playing it very vigorously in this country at this time. But even on Earth, not every culture and not every time has this idea. There's some cultures where people are actually naturally humble. We're not. Lack of humility is our great, great, great obstacle. So then the best antidote to lack of humility, which is really just fear of what your worth is, expressed as desperate attempts to measure up in some way or another. The best antidote is recognizing that you already had value from the very, very beginning, and that nothing can damage it or take it away, and you can't add to it or subtract from it. So you are made of that supreme self, and you're already perfect from the beginning, and you have total equality with every other phenomenon that ever was or ever will be. And you are made of that spectacular wisdom, and all of your quirks and flaws and limitations are all an aspect of the artistry of that supreme self. So you're not perfect by ordinary relativistic human measures, but by the measure of God, you are perfect. And really, what other measure counts at the end? So you have what is called in Dzogchen Vajra nature. Vajra means adamantine, diamond-like, indestructible, clear. And everybody has it, and everything has it, and every plant has it, and every animal has it. So if you can feel that, and it is something you can feel, if you can feel your own Vajra nature, if you can feel your inner value, it's not really inner, but often people experience it like that, then you have what's called Vajra pride, happiness in just being who you are, confidence in essence nature. And then you don't need external measures, and you don't need to keep jockeying for position. It begins to seem ludicrous. And that's where real humility comes from. So it's not that we want to tell ourselves, well, we all measure up. We just need to get rid of the measure entirely. As long as we have any measure of ourselves, we aren't going to have humility. We aren't going to be humble. So maybe you think, well, what's the point of being humble? Boring. Well, the fact of the matter is you can't have deep intimacy without humility either. Until you really feel that you have intrinsic value and everybody else does too, then there's always something in between you and the other person, some concept of these individuals that are meeting, and that there's always a gap between you and the other. And so there's always something to defend or something to measure. If you don't have humility, you can't have total intimacy, or vice versa. But humility and intimacy are related, or humbleness. They're related in an ordinary sense, because when you have real humility, you'll talk to anybody. You'll find interesting things, and you'll find ways to communicate with just about anybody. The sphere of who you're willing to communicate with and how you're willing to communicate and how you approach people is going to be really different. If you're always trying to prove yourself in some way, then how you approach people is going to be aggressive or manipulative. It's going to create distance. It's going to create lack of intimacy. And many, many people, even very socially suave people sometimes, are tremendously lacking in intimacy with others because of their pride, because they see others as competitors, not as equals. And when you experience others as equals in this very, very deep level, and you have a sense of humility, that you are equal to everything here, there's never going to be anything more special about you or less special about you, no matter what you do or don't do. And when you really feel that, then you can approach people in a very different way and experience other people in a very different way, in a much more intimate way. And there's a lot more openings and playfulness and possibility for exchange and really touching other people and having them touch you. Humility or humbleness was not a word that I ever heard uttered by any of my teachers, especially my earlier teachers or my more hardcore Tantra teachers. Never mentioned this word humility or humbleness or modesty. And I never thought about it. And it just kind of became important as I was practicing and realized the beauty of it, the beauty of taking a modest role in life, taking a modest position, just feeling natural modesty inside. It's very relaxing not to be competing with other people or trying to carve out some territory for yourself. It's very relaxing to just be able to experience one's limitations without self-recrimination. In a sense, shame is immodesty, because you think you should be different than you are, and you're constantly worried about yourself and self-referential. That's immodest. It's immodest to spend all this time feeling shamed of oneself and speaking of shame and drawing everyone into your drama of shame. Of course, shame is a real feeling, but understand it's a product of our immodest culture. It seems funny to say that because, of course, shame is when you feel bad about yourself. But you only feel bad about yourself because you think you should be something else. And that's where the real immodesty is. Who are you to think you should be someone else than who you are? God made you this way. Get over yourself. So if we look at all the little nooks and crannies of our narcissistic culture, we're going to find immodesty at the core of it. Lack of humility. And it's a big, big, big obstacle to self-realization. We can't relate to our teachers properly. Students compete with me in all different kinds of ways. It's just because that's what people in our culture do. And that's not a sustainable way or a nourishing way to relate to a teacher. And it's certainly not the way the relationship was envisioned in ancient cultures. But we have to deal with this now because this is where we're at. So it's an experiment. The opposite of feeling shame or whatever it is that we do, feeling like a failure, isn't to just back off and be passive or suppress ourselves. The opposite is get to work and be practical and work with circumstance. Put your head down, be practical, get on with it. It's like God served us this situation. That's the meal we're going to eat, whether we like it or not. So that's an aspect of humility or modesty too. Same with when we get sick or we lose a job or someone leaves us that we didn't want to leave us or someone dies who we didn't want to die. Same circumstance. Even the whole planet getting destroyed is that same circumstance. It's what we have to work with. This is what we're given to work with. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't feel sad either. We're not trying to suppress anything. When we were doing the Mahamrityunjaya, I was asking Ma and the Dakinis, just let this karmic realm vision of planet Earth hang around a little while longer. I like it. I want, I know it's really nothing, but can we just have it for a little while more? When Anandamayi, they had established an ashram in Varanasi right on the banks of the Ganga River. And there's monsoons every year, and the streets of Varanasi get flooded, and a lot of the buildings get flooded. So this is a giant ashram. It's like several stories high. And that monsoon season was bad, and the ashram got flooded, and the foundation crumbled, and I think about half the ashram just slid into the river. And Ma wasn't there at the time. She was in Vindhyachal, which is about 80 kilometers southwest of Varanasi. And some people ran down there from Varanasi to tell Ma this terrible, terrible news that half the ashram was gone. And they told her, and she just laughed her head off. She just thought it was the funniest thing. Maybe she thought the people were funny for being so earnest about it. I don't know. I wasn't there, clearly. But who knows why she was laughing. But in any case, she didn't think it was terrible. It's just the appearing of an ashram, right? And just like she always used to say, the whole world is my ashram. She told her followers, you don't need to build ashrams. It's pointless. Everywhere is an ashram if you have the right attitude. It's about your attitude. It's not about the building. Just like that, you could say the whole world is your home. If your home gets destroyed in a fire or a flood or a tornado or something, you have a whole world as a home. That's just one little speck of a home. Some people spend their whole lives very attached to space and place. And that's one form of life. It can be a very beautiful form of life. But ultimately, all spaces and all places go away, now or later, whether you're around to see it go away or not. So just by the roll of the dice, you ended up being around for a house or a place going away. It's just one among billions of places that have gone away. So we should feel what we feel, but also, again, not suppressing anything, but also recognizing this is just nature accomplishing itself. We still have a home, even if our home goes away. No one can make our home go away. We were born here by the hand of God, and this is our home. As long as we have this manifest form, we belong. We belong wherever we are. Some of us have read books by this black Zen priest named Zenju Earthland Manuel, and she wrote this really beautiful article. And some of it was about her experiences being a black Zen practitioner in mostly white communities. And she talks about the idea of inclusion. And, some of these white communities spiritual communities are working very hard to be inclusive. But she said that's not a right approach because everyone is already included. There's no one here that's less included than anybody else. So we have to start from the premise of everyone is already, from the beginning, always included. And how can we be expressive of that? Not like we're going to include people who've been left out, because no one's been left out. You may have been left out of some particular thing, but your belonging here is incontestable because you're here. So if you can feel that your energy just can come down, right, from hearing this. We have a lot of energy that we're pushing out, frantically, desperately, hysterically pushing out energy to be seen a certain way, to be thought of a certain way, to think of ourselves a certain way, to have a certain kind of life and not some other kind of life. We push out this enormous amount of energy at pretty much every minute of every day. And what if you just stop putting that energy out? But if you felt, I don't have to do anything about anything. I mean, really, why do you have to do anything about anything? can we live without that sense of missionariness that we always have? If we weren't wasting so much energy being missionaries all the time, missionaries and marketers, we would have so much more energy. Shh. Just pull it all back in. Let it settle.